Time for episode 4 of the Average Joe Sports Show. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Bill Doleman, Mitch Sherman. We'll hit Nebraska-Louisiana Tech. A quick recap.
Yeah, we'll also hit Michigan, the build under Harbaugh, and what Nebraska faces on Saturday.
And can coaches find anything more to get personal about this season and to get upset about?
Also, because no one's talking about it, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift at Arrowhead Stadium.
Welcome into the Average Joe Sports Show podcast, episode 4, the Empire Strikes Back edition, I think we could say. Be sure to subscribe and like to the Average Joe Sports Show on Twitter at AJ Sports Pod. Find us, watch us on YouTube, the AJ Sports Show. Bill Doleman, Mitch Sherman, and Mr. Elijah Herbel. Fellas, good weekend. A lot of interesting college football going on. And Nebraska, even at 2-2, we'll get there. But kind of a sun-drenched weekend, and you take a breath, and here comes old Michigan.
Sun-drenched, except for that lightning delay in the fourth quarter on Saturday.
I'm accentuating the positive. That thing did just drone on and on and on.
There was just this little
minutes.
There was just this little cell, this little storm. I mean, this was nothing like 2018. That was the concern coming into the weekend, was that we were going to get a game banged because of weather, and then we just got this little cell, and that lightning, it was sitting there. I think it was gone from downtown for quite a while before they decided to let people back in. So in the press box, I was playing the weatherman, and I was tweeting out to the masses that you can come back. It's fine to come back, but I am not a professional, so.
Well, it was funny because I'm sitting at my house in Northeast Lincoln, and the game gets called due to weather, and I look outside, and it's still sunny. It's sunny in Northeast Lincoln. No rain, no lightning, no nothing. But then you look up on the TV, and it's downpouring at Memorial Stadium, and that's how small the storm was it hit downtown Lincoln and none of the rest of Lincoln.
I got to be honest with you. I think that's probably what will be remembered most for Saturday's game with Nebraska and Louisiana Tech. Remember going into the game last weekend, people were still recalling Tim Rattay and Troy Edwards and Frank Solich's first game as Nebraska's head coach 25 years later. I'm not sure we're going to remember that Nebraska and Louisiana Tech met this season 25 days from now. There really was nothing that happened in that game of significance other than the final score. Nebraska wins it, moves on, and they face Michigan next week. But for the most part, that was a forgettable Saturday afternoon in Lincoln.
It was. I don't know the last time that Nebraska had two 70-yard runs called back by penalty, but other than that, there was nothing distinctive about that game beyond the lightning delay. It did allow me to tune in on my computer and watch the end of the Colorado-Oregon game while Nebraska was in the locker room. And that by that point, and I was watching earlier too, as Oregon dismantled Deion Sanders and the Buffs, but by the time that the lightning hit, that game was over too. So it was just a boring hour.
The best part of that Oregon dismantling, other than the score, was Puddles, the mascot, leading the team out with his cowboy hat, his sunglasses, and he took a sledgehammer to the clock, and it said "Time's up."
Yes, that and the Dan Lanning pregame locker room hype-up speech. Yes, that was notable. Well, I think that will be if you're going to put together like a collage of video hits at the end of this football season, clearly Colorado and Deion, even if it goes downhill entirely from here, they're going to be featured because this was we were mesmerized by this for the better part of a month. And that was the signal that it was over right there, was Dan Lanning and that speech. He is going to be the face behind the downfall of Colorado in 2023. I say that assuming that the Buffs can't rebound against USC this week.
We'll see if SC heads to Boulder locked in or not. We'll spend time on the topic of we've hit disrespect with Deion, and it's personal. But you have coaches that have a long memory, Mitch, Bill, and Elijah. And you go up to Pullman, Washington State. Coach Dickert was calling out the Sunshine Scooter. And, of course, you had Ryan Day on the field after the Ohio State win as time expired. Be sure to call out Mr. Lou Holtz.
This has become the season of discontent and disrespect in college football. It's always been somewhat of a gentleman's game between coaches. For the most part, you might have a rivalry, from one sideline to the other inside the locker room. But this thing is just poured out into the field, and look, we really don't want to keep talking about Deion, and it's all personal, but that has become a recurring theme now week after week, either for the Buffs and Deion. We saw Colorado walking on the Oregon logo. Then it became personal. This Ryan Day thing and Jake Dickert thing with, going after octogenarians for disrespect. I mean, you're going to run out eventually of things to continue to get under your saddle if you're always looking for it every week.
If you had Lou Holtz and Lee Corso on your parlay card as the sources of anger around the top 10 in college football, or the top 25 in the case of Washington State in football in week 4, then I want a piece of whatever you got next. Look, so I'm watching the end of the Ohio State-Notre Dame game, and what a wild finish. We later find out that Notre Dame has 10 players on the field for the final 2 plays, but unbelievable finish. I mean, intensity, 2 great programs, the uniforms, the helmets, the stadium, time expires, Ohio State plunges in. I mean, just what a moment for college football. And then Ryan Day starts firing off bombs at Lou Holtz. And
who's probably not awake.
No. In fact, what I thought incorrectly, fortunately this was incorrect, but what I was curious, and I was a little confused when the Lou Holtz stuff started with Ryan Day, because I wasn't sure if he was still with us. I was thinking, did Lou pass? And
Lou's around.
I know he is, but he was out of sight, and I hadn't heard from Lou in a while, and I had to go on quick on the Wikipedia and just make sure that Ryan Day hadn't completely lost it, that we still had Lou Holtz. Unfortunately, we do, but that's a stretch. That's a stretch to go after Lou Holtz after that one, I would say.
I think Kirk Herbstreit comes to the defense of Lee Corso for what was thought to have been said on game day, where Corso, Dickert made it sound like he said, nobody wants us. Herbstreit says that Corso said, nobody wants us, and it was nobody watches and wants to watch him, or something like that.
Dickert thought he said nobody watches us.
Yeah,
he actually said nobody wants us.
In my rewatch, I could even hear him say, I thought it was nobody watches bowl as well. So
I thought I heard nobody wants, and either way, well, why are we dragging Lee Corso into this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lee's a national treasure. Just let him say what he wants to say. It doesn't impact anybody.
I'm going to stick up for Coach Holtz for a moment, just because he's been a friend of the show in past years, and he has the best bumper sticker ever. And his bumper sticker reads, and it's on his golf cart, and it says, "Jesus may love you, but everyone else thinks you're an a-hole." and that's on the back of his golf cart bumper sticker.
So he probably likes what Ryan Day said. He's like, damn right.
Probably, knowing Coach Holtz and the whatever it takes, right, to get your team fired up. But we get into sustainability.
I just want to know what we need to do here in Lincoln to either get Tom Osborne involved in the next chapter of this, or keep him out. I don't know that there's really anything that Tom would ever say that could anger Jim Harbaugh to the level that we saw from Dickert and Day last week, but we can always dream.
I think if you're gonna,
maybe he disrespects Alanis Morissette,
possibly, or Hootie. I mean, because those are Harbaugh's go-tos on playlists. And the other thing to think about is, I think you could talk about how just gross vitamin D milk is, because that's a Harbaugh staple for supper time. And then for sure the khakis. You got to get away from the pleated khakis and go with the flat front khakis.
Yeah, I like where you're thinking there.
I mean, you got to attack the image.
But I think if you're wanting to drag Coach Osborne into that conversation, I'm guessing that's not on his radar whatsoever. He probably hasn't noticed the khakis. He's probably not noticed Alanis Morissette and Jagged Little Pill. I can't imagine you're going to drag him into it. Remember, we talked about this a few weeks ago, that Colorado tried to drag Tom into not being involved in the Colorado rivalry. Even Bill McCartney started it, and they said he was disrespecting him then because he didn't say anything.
On top of not taking the job in '78, right?
And reignite the '97 debate.
Sure. I think there we go. Why not?
Let's get Tom's opinion.
Tom, how bad would you have crushed Michigan? How overrated's Charles Woodson?
This team has a different task against Michigan.
They do. As you're catching up with the Average Joe Sports Show, make sure you subscribe to us and find us on Twitter. Give us a follow at AJ Sports Pod. And on YouTube, the AJ Sports Show. Follow that. And, of course, Spotify and Apple iTunes, where you can download the show. Guys, it is Michigan week. We've touched a little bit on Louisiana Tech, forgettable, but the offense is where I want to start, and it's, listen, you don't want to bellyache too much about running for 300 yards, and Nebraska does have a go-to. They want to run the football and be physical. That's all well and good, but what's your passing game going to look like Saturday? We know what it needs to look like. It needs to be serviceable, and we don't know if it's serviceable against a team of that ilk in Michigan.
Does Nebraska even pose a threat through the air to Michigan or really to anybody else? Offensively, that has to be the question going forward. They have solid runners at the quarterback position. I think that's been established. Anthony Grant proved to be an elite running back again on Saturday with what he did against Louisiana Tech. I think that offensive line, it is not dominant by any stretch, but 300 yards is 300 yards. That is certainly pass if you're going pass, no pass, right? So what can Nebraska do to allow the running game some breathing room through the air? That's the big question, I think.
We sat here last week, and I think I was in the minority in saying that Nebraska needed to throw it more in order to set up the run. And it seemed to be that's the way that Marcus Satterfield game planned in an attempt to open some things up. He brought out the 3 wides on the first play of the game, and of course it started in an ominous way because Harbaugh was sacked. And in the second half, they went the complete different direction. It was all fullback ahead of the running back on that first drive, 85 yards, 9 plays, all on the ground. So it seems that they've made their choice, and they're not going to, at least against Louisiana Tech, and it's hard to think that they're going to completely change this thing even going against Michigan or back into the Big Ten, because you have to go with what works as an offensive team. They're set to be, as much as they can, the Nebraska of old that just says, we're going to hammer you, we're going to run. We've got offensive linemen that are better suited for the run right now than to sit back and pass pro. And if we can get hit some play action passes because you're thinking that we run, then that'll get us yards through the air. I think that's just who this team is. And credit to Rule for recognizing what their personnel is and how it works, but can it get them to 6 wins is the question.
Well, and you talk about getting back to the past. What was, in my opinion, the most successful running play that Nebraska ran on Saturday? It was under center option. Nebraska was gashing Louisiana Tech on that play. Is Nebraska going to embrace the option against Michigan? I don't know. You worry about the speed with that Michigan defense, how well it's going to work moving forward, but I don't think it was contestable that whenever Nebraska ran that triple option look against Louisiana Tech, they were busting off chunk play after chunk play after chunk play.
I worry about
back to the old, but
I worry about the physical safety of their quarterback, and the running back. If Harbaugh, if he's the guy, or Sims, if they're not schooled in the way to pitch you have to be able to pitch the ball. I mean, Louisiana Tech was woefully prepared to stop that option, but Michigan will not be. They'll know how to do it, and their speed will make all the difference in the world. Aggressiveness, running downhill at those guys. Those holes aren't going to be there, and if you have any shot at all to run the option, you need to be a threat to pitch it.
Got to be able to pitch it, and I do like my favorite play ever in Nebraska football is the fake option, whether it's Godowski or Keith and McCant or Tommy Frazier, Crouch, whoever, where they gash a defense that's all flying up to go take the pitch man, take the quarterback, and then here comes Matt Harrion or Johnny Mitchell or Wilson Thomas or pick somebody. that is wide open off of that fake option pass.
They've got that guy in Thomas Fidone, and he showed he can go up and make a play. Like, we knew that he could athletically, but he's done it 2 weeks in a row now on the sideline against Northern Illinois and then going way high against Louisiana Tech to catch a touchdown. Three straight games with touchdowns from Harburg to Fidone, so that's nothing to this is a trend. This is something that is a real weapon for Nebraska. And, yeah, you're right. If they can take that 2 steps down the line for the quarterback then just back up and find that open target, Fidone's the guy who can really give them something there.
I got to tell you, as a longtime observer of Nebraska football, and I sit next to Schmidt at the games, when I see the quarterback take the snap and do that reverse pivot on the option and then go down the line, I weep nostalgically. I don't care if it's Turner Gill or Travis Turner. To see that play and that action and then the pitch.
You're waiting to see that pitch.
Oh, yeah, it's been spectacular to see that. But, you know, if they can be more proficient at running it and make it more of a threat, maybe not against Michigan, because you're right. If Michigan doesn't see it a lot, they still have the athleticism and the speed to stop it. You know, Miami would do that back in the day. But when you get against teams that are not Michigan and the number 2 team in the country, or a team that gives up less than 6 points per game and is the number 1 total defense in the country, when you get into other games, Illinois, Purdue, Northwestern, Michigan State, and you become proficient at that option and efficient enough in the passing game that you're completing 10 of 15 with more than just Fidone being the guy. There's got to be another option in the passing game. But if Nebraska can do that after this weekend, then you're looking at, I think, again, I said it last week, the defense is going to get them to a bowl game. That offense, if it can utilize the option often, that'll get them to a bowl game as well. The one thing in the passing game that I really think they're missing is Ramir Johnson.
Yeah.
He is so good at picking up that blitz and giving the quarterback just a little extra time to throw the ball. Now, whether it's completed or not, that remains to be seen. But he was such a good pass-blocking running back, and now he's gone, and they missed that big time.
And I'll give credit where credit's due to Heinrich Harburg, because in the passing game, I think he was 8 of 18 on Saturday. It wasn't a great performance there, but there's only one pass that stands out in my memory on that first drive of him putting the ball into a dangerous area. And that's the thing we talked about heading into this game. It's going to be so crucial for Nebraska's offense to not turn the football over and to be positive in that turnover differential. They get the Isaac Gifford pick at the end. You don't turn the ball over, and there's that one. It was the flag route on the first drive where you underthrew it, and you had that corner coming up from the low zone up and almost making a great play on the ball. That's the one play that stands out in my memory as being one that probably should have been intercepted, probably should have been a turnover. But other than that, Nebraska's offense, and Heinrich Harburg in particular, did a great job of protecting the football, not putting it into dangerous spots. And despite the fact that Harburg is 8 of 18, I think that is a reason for positivity moving forward, that after probably 2 or 3 times he put it into danger against Northern Illinois, is only 1 against Louisiana Tech. Now, Michigan's a different defense. It's going to be a much bigger challenge next week in terms of not putting the ball into dangerous areas, but that was improvement from Heinrich Harburg despite the fact that he doesn't have the efficiency that you'd like through the air.
Well, Mitch, what do the numbers need to be passing for you?
Well, if you're going to win, if you're going to get push that 6 win total, they need to limit the turnovers. I think they need to be up around 60 to 65% on the completion rate and throwing for an excess of 150 to 175 yards a game. I mean,
how many attempts?
20. That pitch counts 10 to 15, isn't it? Maybe 20?
20 plus passes. Now, I don't know if that's the direction they're headed, because I more than just statistics in the pass game, I think the thing they have to do is commit to an offensive style. And I think we started to see that in the second half against La Tech, but that's Louisiana Tech. And thinking ahead a little bit here, you kind of take this week out of the equation. Michigan, there's not a lot that Nebraska can do that is realistically going to give it a chance to win that game. I'll gladly be wrong when we reconvene here next Monday and eat those words, but that's how I feel today. A week later, they go to Illinois, presumably at 2-3, and there's a bye week after that Illinois game. The difference for Nebraska in being 3-3 going into that bye week, when you've got an extra 7 days to fine-tune your offense, change things if you need to, install some new plays and whatever the system's going to be, if you're going to go back to the air, if you're going to do some things and doubling down on the run game, teaching the quarterbacks to do stuff in the option. The difference between being 3-3 versus 2-4 are everything for your chances to get to 6 wins and make a bowl game.
I want to get into just that identity and what's doable. As I sit here and we talk about Nebraska, Michigan, I just, for the life of me, I envision 3 and outs. Just 3 and outs on top of 3 and outs because of what Nebraska is on the offensive line, what they're in trouble against with that speed and athleticism, and the fact that you've got 2 quarterbacks that 2 of them, and Rule talked about it today, haven't finished games because they've been dinged up. You've got Grant and then what's behind him, and I just don't know how they're going to do anything offensively. Maybe Michigan isn't the 85 Bears, but you have some things that you can maybe talk yourself into. Nebraska's been able to average 6 yards a carry in the fourth quarter. And I'll also know more about how we like this defense. They're fun to watch. But what are they really when it comes to their yards per carry, and how great of a rush defense are they truly? Because it's going to get a chance to get tested something fierce on Saturday with how Harbaugh and Michigan get downhill with Corum.
Yeah, it's, to get in a place where this team was in 2021 when Michigan last visited Memorial Stadium and it comes down to the end and Adrian Martinez fumbles and Nebraska was in position to win that game. To get back in a place like that, it would take, I think, multiple turnovers on the plus side for Nebraska, and they just went +1. They've improved through as the year's gone on. It was, really bad the first 2 weeks and a little better against Northern Illinois, and then you finally got on the plus side against Louisiana Tech. It would have to be way on the plus side against Michigan.
TCU, Michigan.
Yeah, right. You would need like a defensive touchdown.
Or a return.
Right. You put those things together, right, a special teams score. You put those things together and maybe you can hang around until into the second half. And then you get that stadium and who knows what might happen. But that's a tough call. That's a tough task considering the way these 4 games have gone for Nebraska.
And if there is, go for it.
Well, I was going to say they've got to get a turnover early. Mm-hmm. Not just late in the game when somebody's down by 2 touchdowns. They need to force something early on and take advantage of it.
And I don't think it's about shutting down a high-flying Michigan offense. Michigan is what they are offensively, which is body blows. They're going to run the football at you. Those 2 and 3 yard rushes in the first quarter are going to turn into 6 and 7 yard rushes in the second half. That's their vision. But their offense hasn't been leading the way thus far this year. It's been their defense. Their defense is stout. It's athletic. It flies around. Hasn't allowed many points. And they give their offense a lot of runway to be able to use those body blows. So for me, the turnovers are less about setting up and getting plays for your defense in order to keep Michigan off the board. It's more about setting up your offense, getting them in plus territory, giving them some easier opportunities to scoring points, because I don't think Michigan is built offensively to run away from you. Their passing attack hasn't been quite up to the standard that Harbaugh's wanted for them thus far this year, aside from Roman, what's his name? Yikes. Should know that one. It's on the tip of my tongue. What's his last name? Anyway, I digress. Their passing game, aside from the one wide receiver, hasn't been great. They've been trying to get Corum and Edwards a little more involved in the passing game. Nebraska is set up to stop the run pretty well. So it's not going to be something where Nebraska has to go put up 35 points offensively to go beat Michigan. That's a positive sign, but is your offense even going to be able to put up 10? It's been a struggle for almost anyone to go put up 10 points against Michigan this year.
Roman Wilson.
Sorry
to leave you hanging. 6 touchdowns through the air for Michigan this season. More than the Nebraska team, by the way.
Thank you. Mitch Sherman.
Addendum.
From the Athletic.
Michigan's win over Rutgers was somewhat similar to Nebraska-Colorado. That was kind of a slugfest for a half. Kind of close. Rutgers probably had a couple of chances that had they taken advantage, maybe they have a lead at halftime or more competitive, but it just got away from them. 31-7 is the final, and the game was not in doubt in the fourth quarter. And it's somewhat similar to what we saw in Boulder with Nebraska and the Buffs.
And don't sleep on Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers was 3-0 coming in. Mm-hmm. I believe a win over Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm going to look that up. But I mean,
they had their shot to be up 10-7 going into half.
Right. We can say all you want about the competition that Michigan's faced, and it was Rutgers. Well, Rutgers is
better,
probably favored over Nebraska if they play tomorrow.
Don't disagree. I mean, with what they've done right now, and they look good for 30 minutes anyway.
They look good for 30 minutes, but it's still only 7 points on the board. And whenever you look at Michigan's team totals defensively this year, they've allowed 23 points. And of those 23 points, 10 came in garbage time. So realistically, when the game's in the balance, that defense, whenever the starters are in, have allowed a total of 13 points this season.
Michigan and Georgia both have been getting slapped publicly about their schedule. Michigan still has Ohio State to end the year. They're going to Lincoln. Michigan still has to mess with Penn State. So it's a tough East to get out alive and get to Indianapolis. But overall, I mean, we've all tuned in on Michigan enough this season to know the eye test when we see it. They've got a competent and talented quarterback that's not dangerous with the football. They got a stud running back. They've got a great O-line. And Mitch, the blueprint and kind of idea or vision Harbaugh had has been continued to be reloaded. They are fascinating that not only do they develop talent, but they recruit for, and they'll get the occasional 5-star. So they've got the best of both worlds where they're developing, but they're also getting high-level kids to come in. They are a recruiting machine. They're constantly 1, 2, or 3 in the Big Ten and usually top 10 in the country.
Yeah, the thing about Michigan, I think if you're Nebraska and you're sitting in the offices at Memorial Stadium this week and you're looking at them and you're assessing what you have to go against, it's I think the thing that will continually be reinforced is how Michigan has built this the way that Nebraska is dreaming to do it. And Matt Rule talked about that on Monday at his press conference to preview the week about how Harbaugh is showing the way for schools like Nebraska, for a program that wants to be methodical and physical and in your face, and there are no surprises. You get what you know you're going to get, and we're going to take what we want. That kind of attitude. That's what he's built. And, it wasn't that way for the first few years. You think back to 3 years ago when he was on the hot seat and he had to renegotiate the contract to, take kind of a Scott Frost deal. And wow, has it turned. And the reason it's turned is because they have doubled down on that philosophy of being the most physical team on the field every time they're out there. That's what Matt Rule wants. That's what he's building. That's why his first team is way up in the rankings in comparison to last year in rush defense and rush offense. They're not where they want to be as a program, as a team, not even close, but the reason for hope, the foundation that they're laying, what you're seeing and that creates the most optimism is that they have become a team that stops the run so far through 4 games and runs the ball well. And that's what Michigan has perfected over these last 3 years. And then they do a bunch more. They bring in talent. They can throw it. They have a talented quarterback, great receivers, great DBs. But where it starts is that stopping the run and running the ball well.
And he was also complimentary of Harbaugh being the one who, developed the satellite camp, recruiting advantage, and Rule even said that he had worked some of those with Harbaugh, so he kind of saw that blueprint put into place. Now, what you don't want to do is buy hamburgers during a pandemic because that'll get you in trouble. 3-game suspension. So Michigan survived that this year because Harbaugh's just been on the sidelines. One game was the Rutgers game, was his first, but it was very complimentary. And Mitch, you're right about that. They let him, despite some. Besides the seat getting warm, they let him build the program, and it did pay off. And that's one thing that I think Nebraska people need to understand. If Rule is the program builder that he has been sold to be and seems to be, you got to give him time. It's working for Florida State with Mike Norvell. Remember, they wanted to run him out of town after they lost to Jacksonville State. What was it, just a year ago? And now they're a top 5 program. If you go way back, Clemson didn't like that Dabo Sweeney guy that got the job. Things turned out fairly well for him. But Michigan has to be given a lot of credit for sticking with Harbaugh, understanding what he wanted to do, and building the program that he has, which, despite the fact that Penn State might be the best team in the Big Ten, I think it's arguable to say that Michigan has the best program in the Big Ten right now. I know Ryan Day would get mad at that, But with what Harbaugh has done to establish roots and win, 2 back-to-back games against Ohio State, you got to say it's the premier program in the Big Ten Conference.
It is. I want to go back to Harbaugh finally being freed. And what does he do when he's in timeout on Saturday, the last 3 weeks? Is he raking leaves? Is he pacing the living room? Is he shaking? I mean, how does a guy like Harbaugh that's uber intense, connects well with his guys, taskmaster, guy that's just won and done it at every level, how does a guy like that keep from going stir crazy when he can't be on the sideline?
Yeah, I would direct everybody to The Athletic.
Listening to Alanis Morissette, I don't know.
Yeah, I would direct everybody to The Athletic, and my colleague Austin Meek wrote a story about that last week about what he does and how the time that he spent away from the team made him a better coach. Now, I want to get some details, and I would like to read this thing and really dig into it, but it's an interesting topic for sure. He maybe went out and ran some routes on the practice field.
Sure.
If you recall the last time Michigan played in Lincoln, Jim Harbaugh was in cleats and gloves during warm-ups. He likes to do that. So
he likes taking snaps, too.
Yes. I'm going to be down on the field on Saturday around 1 o'clock to see if he comes out of the locker room in cleats and gloves again. This is his first time, Michigan's first time, away from the big house this year. So, and just Harbaugh's second game back. He's had a very interesting start, a very unusual start to this seventh season of his in Ann Arbor. Ninth. 2000. He came when Riley came. That's right. It was Riley and Paul Chryst and Jim Harbaugh. Who'd have thought that Harbaugh would outlast all of those guys? I mean, maybe Riley you would expect, but certainly not Paul Chryst.
Yeah.
Well, and from what I see from the outside looking in, what Harbaugh has built at Michigan really reminds me, maybe not in terms of dominance over the sport, but in terms of style of play, how they go in football games. Reminds me of what Bama did circa 2010, before Nick Saban embraced the running quarterback and the spread offense, where it's very much game manager quarterback. He can make all the throws. We're going to march down the field methodically using the rushing attack, some very good running backs, and then we're going to rely on our defense where you have a whole bunch of five-star recruits that fly around and make plays. And I don't want to go to all the national championships that Nick Saban won in that short span. It's not that in terms of dominance. You're still waiting for Michigan to take that next step, but it very much feels like a program that is built in the same ilk as what Nick Saban built at Bama back whenever he was winning national championships. It felt like just about every single year. Let's
throw this on the table just because that's what we do. Things aren't going so well in Chicago. Kevin Warren is the president of the Chicago Bears.
Does he make a call to Harbaugh?
That's my question. Why not?
And Harbaugh's going to ask, is Ditka still there?
do the Bears come calling for Jim Harbaugh and give him whatever he wants? Or does he now say, this is where I'm going to be, I'm putting the flag down, I'm throwing away the moving boxes, and no more phone calls? He's going to be like Mark Few at Gonzaga or Tom Osborne back in the day at Nebraska. I'm not leaving. But you got to believe that call is going to be made.
Or with Justin Fields at quarterback. Maybe you get the first overall pick and you get Caleb Williams. I mean, do you go talk to Ryan Day from Ohio State? It's been a lot of rumors for a long time that Ryan Day wants to make the leap to the NFL.
I think any coach that can get out of college football that's won a championship or wants to do that before they go absolutely looks at the NFL just because of what college football is. You don't have national legislation yet with the NIL part of things, and it's a 24-hour, 12-month-a-year gig for college football. There's a little downtime. There's a little work-life balance for big-time football people. They even want to go fishing or play golf or barbecue or do something, and you don't get it right now in college. Instead, you're trying to get enough support staff to help manage everything.
Harbaugh has flirted with the Broncos and the Vikings the past two off seasons after taking Michigan to the college football playoff. I think the only way, I don't know if there is a way, I was going to say I think the only way that he would settle down and determine that Michigan is the spot for him long term is if the Wolverines win a national championship this year. But even that could be a reason to push him back out the door to the NFL. He may say, hey, I've done it. I got to the mountaintop in college, so come on down, Chicago Bears. His actions in the off seasons after winning Big Ten championships lead me to believe that if that opportunity was there and he felt good about it, and the Bears, well, that's home. That's one of the homes,
right?
Partially home to him. I think it would be awfully attractive.
I still think he's ticked off from the renegotiation. I mean, he's kept that in his back pocket. I mean, it was kind of a 12th hour. I don't know that he was a top 3 choice for the NFL gigs that were open, but he sure had it out there that there was interest by both parties. No, I think he wants to go win a Super Bowl. I mean, he's ticked off about the renegotiation at Michigan. He's ticked off that he lost a Super Bowl when he was in San Francisco, and what fizzled out there is just his intensity versus the general manager at the time, and he's just, I don't want to say he's tough to work with or work for, but it takes a special person to do that in the NFL because you've got that constant tug of war of the GM that's going to cut or sign a player, and you got to coach him. He did really, really well in flipping San Francisco around. And no, I mean, he's unique that he can come back into college like he's done at a high-profile program, his alma mater, and get them right to a level they haven't been at for forever. And they're forced. And then he's finally kind of slayed that Ohio State giant the last 2 seasons when he'd been written off, and he'd been close in years previous. No, I think the NFL's where he finishes and ends up his career.
The cheeseburger situation could help push him away.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think the negotiations with the Bears needs to be, you give me the keys to the place, and you're all leaving, right?
Just leave me alone. I'll build my team, and I can have. I'm going to call Andy up down in Kansas City. He has great recommendations for cheeseburgers everywhere. We'll play a little Jimmy Buffett, cheeseburgers in paradise, and I'll feed the team.
Andy
Reid
in
trouble.
Andy Reid, you mean the matchmaker, Andy Reid?
I think so. How's that gone in your household? Because you've got a unique situation.
Yeah, my 16-year-old daughter, her 2 favorite people in the world are Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. So when that came on the TV on Sunday, the roof almost came off the house. I think is the best way to describe it without getting too descriptive. Big moment. Big moment all around the country. I couldn't get away from it. I went to baseball practice in the afternoon, middle of the Chiefs game. Kids were talking about it. 12-year-old boys were talking about it. Coaches, the dads, they were talking about Taylor in the box at Arrowhead. A few years ago, Buddy and I got an opportunity to sit in one of the suites at Arrowhead for a Sunday night game. And in the suite next to us was the Mahomes family. And they had Travis Kelce's then girlfriend in the suite with them. I believe Taylor had her own suite. The Kelces have now advanced to the level where they don't sit with the Mahomes any longer.
Oh, they get their own.
Yes, and my daughter, she was with me, Chiefs fan, hence the Kelce love. She was wearing a Kelce jersey. And there was a delay. This all comes back to Nebraska, the football on Saturday. There was a rain delay in that game, in the second half of that game, and we were out in the lobby area. And the Kelce travel party, the entourage, made some comments to her, some complimentary comments about the jersey that she was wearing. So, I feel like we're invested in this. Like we're deep in the middle of this, and for it to happen at Arrowhead too, where my daughter saw Taylor perform in the month of July. It's like very much worlds colliding.
And the big winner in all this, in my opinion, is Donna Kelce, the mother of Travis and Jason. What a whirlwind 12 months for her. Have both your kids playing in the Super Bowl, or both your sons playing in the Super Bowl against each other. It's a win-win situation. Jason Kelce is starting this successful podcast. He's just had a documentary released about him. And the other son, Travis, he's the best tight end of all time, and now he's dating Taylor Swift, and you get to sit next to her in the box. What a life for her. That's the all-American story right there.
What's better? What's a bigger deal? Watching your 2 sons play in the Super Bowl, or sitting next to Taylor Swift for an entire game against the horrendous Chicago Bears?
And only one person can answer that question.
Mama.
Donna Kelce.
I mean, to her credit, she looked pretty comfortable up in this suite. I wonder if...
Not too starstruck.
I wonder if this has been going on longer behind the scenes than anyone would actually say publicly. Like, if it's a first time meeting the parents and it's at a football game in the box, she was surprisingly comfortable for that entire situation, especially for it being Taylor Swift, regardless of anyone. But
she she had a great time.
Taylor or Donna?
Taylor.
She's supposed to be an Eagles fan.
Oh, I know. Because she grew up in Pennsylvania anyway. And no, I mean, she was hooping and hollering and was all chiefed out, and Travis got into the end zone. The funny part was Mahomes talking about this afterwards. Said, yeah, you got to take with a grain of salt what Travis tells you. And he said before the game, he's like, dude, look for me. I need to score a touchdown because Taylor Swift's here watching me play. And Mahomes is like, you just never really know if you're going to believe Travis Kelce or not. Travis says a lot of things a lot of times, and sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not, but I had to find him.
America needs to know if this is going to become a weekly thing. And if it is, the Chiefs are going to be on national TV every single game.
Anyway.
Well, they already are because of Mahomes and in part Kelce, really Mahomes. But if you add Taylor Swift to the Chiefs bandwagon, forget it. It's it could arguably be bigger than Deion.
Knowing the TV business,
finally.
Knowing the TV business, I'm wondering what decisions were being made inside the administrative offices of television networks around the country, thinking, what can we do to attract a different demo? Let's see if we can't get this Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing going, and we train a camera on the box because we will have Mitch Sherman's daughter and the like tuning in to watch our games on Sunday afternoon.
Well, did you see the screenshots yesterday on Twitter and other social media sites of all the Swifties trying to figure out how football works? Some of the funniest things I've ever seen. What's a field goal? They're all trying to figure it out so they can watch the Chiefs. So
ESPN is generally the best at adding new elements to games. I mean, Amazon does a great job, but I mean, like different channels, like the Manning Cast and things like that. They've done various extra broadcasts with games. There will be a Taylor Swift only broadcast of a Chiefs game on a separate channel. It'll be on, on ESPN2 or whatever it needs to be if the Chiefs show up on that network in a game that she attends.
Well, and how about NFL Red Zone for Taylor Swift? You get to see all the games on NFL Sunday with a focus on the Chiefs.
And a shot.
But anytime there's a chance that Travis Kelce is going to get a touchdown in the end zone, it's just a camera trained on Taylor Swift. You get to see her reaction to any single Chiefs touchdown drive that may end in Travis Kelce. There's the future right there.
I can't believe this is the topic of conversation.
We're going to get out of it, I promise. But how long do they last, and how many songs are dedicated on the next album to Travis Kelce?
Well, it could be a whole album. But no, I think there's probably already a song in the works.
Okay. All right. Well, you can only get the topic of, and I don't have the nickname, it's not Benifer. There's not a solidified name yet for Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift.
Tavis.
We got to work on that one. The Average Joe Sports Show. Give us a follow on Twitter. The AJ Sports Pod is where you find us on Twitter. YouTube, the AJ Sports Show. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Guys, we'll have predictions here for the podcast later on in the week, but we'll just kind of preface it right now. The line has fluctuated as we wind down between 17.5 and 18.5, and I'm thinking whoever gets to 13 first is going to get that finish line.
I think that's the point spread. I think that's also the over-under.
It is going to be.
The over-under is surprisingly high. Get it now before it drops.
What is the over?
It's
like
50? 43.5, I think.
Okay.
Let me look that up for you.
I thought it was 18 and 18. That's what I thought it was.
Man, it just
may not be a lot of points scored.
Steep hill to climb for the Big Red.
Nebraska has not been shut out since 1996 at Arizona State. It's always It's always a good reminder. There was a game a few years ago where I thought it was in real jeopardy, and
Oklahoma, right? Bill Callahan kicked the field goal.
Well, that was more than a few years ago. Yes, that was in jeopardy down to the last second, and I think many in the stadium that day would think that Bill Callahan should not have kicked that field goal, but he did, and the shutout streak, the shutout avoidance streak, continued. No, there was one maybe last year or the year before. It was in Oklahoma, here in Lincoln, where Nebraska was looking like a team that was not equipped to score points, and that may be the case again on Saturday. Not to be too ominous.
The line I have looked up, we'll see how this changes. 41.5 is the total for Nebraska and Michigan. I think you got a good look at the under this week.
Yep.
Nebraska jumps out to the early lead.
Yeah.
Michigan has to come from behind to win in Lincoln.
By the way, just to preview the late in the week pod a little bit, did you guys notice we did pretty well? Bill, you did especially well on some of your picks as we went through that week. We've talked about Colorado, Oregon. We've talked about Ohio State, Notre Dame. But, man, we killed it. We all killed it on Florida State winning at Clemson.
Not me.
Most of us did.
Oh, you guys said Clemson?
Just me.
No, I had
everyone
Florida
said
State.
Everyone said Florida State but me. I said Clemson outright.
75% still good.
Bill nailed Alabama. So we did pretty well. We nailed Penn State, taking Iowa to the woodshed. So tune in at the end of this week because we might have some good advice for you.
That's what we're here for.
Let it be known. I may have picked Clemson, but I did also pick Ohio State. But I don't think, did anyone pick Northwestern? I don't think we talked about that game. What a comeback from Northwestern.
That did not make the roster.
Holy cow. I was
roster.
texting Schmidt on Saturday night because what a freaking comeback from the Northwestern Wildcats. And then the worst field storm I've ever seen in my life following the game.
27 people. That did not make the Chicago Tribune print edition that had the final of Minnesota winning the game.
Dewey defeats Truman. Yeah.
We'll be back at it next week, or I should say later on in the week, with the second podcast, episode 4 here of the Average Joe Sports Show. Again, the AJ Sports Pod on Twitter. Give that a follow. Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. YouTube can watch us there. Subscribe to that, the AJ Sports Show. And we'll get caught up later on in the week, Nebraska, Michigan.